All right, welcome to the Credit Race. This is the Beginner Secrets course. My name is Larry, and we're just going to jump right into it. Just to give you a little overview of what we're going to be learning here, you're going to learn all about credit. You're going to learn what credit is. You're going to learn why it's important to you. You're going to learn how it's affecting you right now. You probably don't even know it. And you're going to learn how to use it, and how to ultimately not only build your credit and boost it, but also protect it. Okay, so we're going to learn all those things during this course. So let's just jump right in, okay? So first of all, what is credit? What's it about? So let me just give you some ideas on what credit is, okay? Credit is what allows creditors, and I'm talking about stores, banks, car lenders, those are creditors, okay? It allows creditors to track whether you're making payments on time, and it'll also track when you're making payments not on time, okay? Anytime you paid a bill late, if you have a delinquency, if you have a late payment, if you paid your MasterCard, it'd been 30 days and went beyond that and you paid it late, it probably showed up on your credit report, okay? So that's called a derogatory. And we don't want those. We don't want those derogatories on your credit report. And we'll talk a lot more about this as we go. But that's really what it is. Credit just allows the people that might lend to you, be it a mortgage or a car loan, a personal loan, or even a credit card, extending you a line of revolving debt or revolving credit. They're looking at whether or not you're making payments online, and they're also seeing when you don't, okay? So that's the first part of it, So credit score is really, it's based on how many payments were paid on time and then how many payments were not paid on time. So same kind of concept. All right, so you're going to get a number when you establish credit. If you don't have credit now, or if you have had credit in the past and something went bad with it, you're going to know this, but you're going to get a score, okay? It's called a FICO score, and that stands for Fair Isaac Corporation. That's kind of irrelevant to our conversation, but some people want to know what acronyms are, so I'm going to throw them out as we go along, okay? And so the banks will be able to look at the FICO score that you have, and they're going to have a minimum score that qualifies you for your credit card or your car loan, things like that. Now they're going to look at other elements of your credit report, but that FICO score, man, it's really the hard driver. And there's a good reason for that, okay? So ultimately these creditors, these lenders, they're trying to gauge whether or not you'll be able to pay back the loans if they make you a loan, if they give you a credit card. They're basically asking the question, will this person be able to pay us back if we give them this loan or this credit card? All right, so the score's broken down into some different pieces. They're percentages. It's like a pie. There's like multiple slices of that pie, and some of them are a lot more important to your score than others. And we're going to go into detail of that, and I think module 3 or 4. So hang around for that, okay? But that's just the idea. So it's not just one FICO score based on one credit card or one loan you had or anything like that. It's based on a lot of different factors, and those are little pieces of it, different percentages, okay? So that's important to know. We'll cover that in a different module. So I want to end this introductory module with a few things about credit where the government gets involved, okay? So there's something out there, there's a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, okay, the FRCA. Very important to you for two reasons, really. So this act, it gave everyone the visibility into their credit score. So imagine that. I mean, now you have all these different places you can go find your credit score or get a credit report. Well, before the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you really didn't have that ability. There was a lot of information being collected on me and you about how we use credit, and there really was not a lot of good visibility to it. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it gives you the visibility, your own credit score and your credit history. So you know what your credit history is, and that allows you to take action if it's not exactly what you want it to be, to improve it and to boost it. Now, the other thing that FCRA does is it also regulates how credit info is collected. So maybe they're collecting things on you they shouldn't be. Maybe banks are collecting data on you and sharing it with other banks that you don't want shared. Maybe different companies like LexisNexis are like sharing your information, sharing your identifying information. So the FCRA laid down specific guidelines on what can be collected around your credit information. So that's very important. So around 2003, the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, was amended with this new part called the FACTS Act, F-A-C-T, okay? And that FACTS Act did something very cool for you. So it legally made you able to get one free credit report a year. Now think about that. Before the FACTS Act was in place, if you wanted to know your credit history, you had to go pay for it. You had to go pay Experian or Equifax, or TransUnion for, a credit report. And they're not exactly cheap. So it's kind of interesting. Before this act, you had to go actually pay for it. So now with this act, the FACTS Act, you get one free credit report a year. Okay, and you're probably going to want more than one a year, especially if you're going to work with us on actually fixing your credit and boosting your credit. But this is a good start. It gives you a level set, and you know where you stand from the beginning, okay? Now, one other thing about the FCRA, Section 604 of the FCRA is very important. If you've ever gotten a loan, you've been to the bank and they've said, hey, do we have rights? Do we have your express permission to check your credit? Or if you're going for a credit card and you want to click a button to say, see if you qualify, there'll be something that you have to check a box that says we have your express permission to check your credit. So that's what this is. Section 604 of the FCRA says that no company, no bank, no one has the right to pull your credit report without explicit permission from you. And this is really important when we learn more about your credit score. Every time somebody does a hard pull on your credit, we'll talk about what that means in the future. But a hard pull, it actually puts an inquiry on your credit report, and that does hurt your score a little bit. So this is why it was put in place. Nobody can check your credit without your permission. Very important piece of this. All right, guys, so this has been Module 1. So glad you're here. Stick around for Module 2. We'll see you in the next module. Hey guys, welcome back. This is Module 2. We're going to talk about what credit is used for. So when you're going to the grocery store, you're going to buy some tomatoes, maybe a little can of Pringles or some cheese or something like that, you're probably totally going to use your debit card or some cash you have in your pocket. Those are the type of purchases that you're going to use just your regular money for. Okay? When we talk about using credit, we're talking about making large purchases, buying a house, maybe getting a car loan, getting some other kind of bank loan, okay? Qualifying for an apartment rental, even getting a job. They actually check your credit for things like that. So these are the things that require a credit score, okay? A good credit score to get, all right? So credit score is used to give the lenders an opportunity to look at, how you are faring in the world of paying people back on time. So just think of credit as your adult credit, your adult score, your adult financial score. When it comes to banks, when it comes to credit card companies, that kind of thing, they want to know, if we loan you money, will you be able to pay us back? That's really the whole thing. That's all that this is about. All right. So it's used for borrowing money. Just remember it that way. Okay. So credit score, the FICO score goes from 350 to 850. That's the range. So just like when we were in high school or in grade school, we had A, B, C, D, F. And as adults, in the financial world, we have 500, 600, 700, 800. That's kind of the way it works. Okay, so 350 to 850, that's the range. All right. So right now, as we speak, the average credit score in the U.S. is 711. Now that's a little bit higher than it has been in the past. And that's really because in 2020, with all the craziness going on, a lot of people were spending less, they were saving money, and they were actually paying credit card debts down. So that's from the data we got for the year 2020. And so it actually brought the scores up quite a bit. So it's kind of like a lesson, when you hold on to a little cash, when you pay your credit cards down, your score goes up. And that's kind of what happened on average across the entire country. Kind of interesting, right? So again, the way it works is you're going to get this FICO score, okay? And the banks are going to lend money to people with higher scores. They're gonna, you know, if you have higher scores, you're gonna get better rates. If you have lower scores, they may still lend to you, but you're gonna get lower rates. Or I'm sorry, reverse that around. So if you have a better score, you're gonna get lower rates. They're gonna lend to you at lower interest rates. Now, if you have a lower credit score, a lower FICO score, they may still lend to you, but your rates are gonna be a lot higher. Let me give you an example. So let's say you go to CarMax or somewhere like that, you know, any place to have a car, and your score is, let's call it a, I don't know, like a 680, okay? They're probably gonna lend you the money or sell you a car and let you finance it, but let's say your rates might be in the 7 to 8% range. Now, for the same person, let's say you have a 750 credit score, okay? More than likely your rates are gonna be in the 5s. So that's going to save you an incredible amount of money. If you do that math, it's going to save you a lot of money over the life of the car. Let's say you buy the car and you finance it over 5 years. It's going to save you an incredible amount of money. Just that difference between 7% and 5%, it's a huge amount of money. Okay, cool. All right, so all banks, all car lenders, all boat lenders, all credit card companies, they all use this system. So the FICO score system, the 3 credit bureaus, all of this is used by all these different lenders. So it's, you know, the credit race is just one group of people that you're going to be dealing with every time. So I guess, you know, that you could consider that good as like none of these outliers you're going to be dealing with. It's really these 3 credit bureaus and basically your FICO score. That's really the whole thing. Okay. So to get a home, to get vehicles, to get credit cards, you have to have a good credit score. All right, that's all I got for this module. We'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be talking about the 3 credit bureaus today. And those are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Okay? I'm going to give you a little history on each of these. It's kind of interesting how some of them came about. So let's talk about Equifax first. Equifax started in 1899, and it came about in Great Britain, so in England, where there were some tailors. Now, tailors meaning people that made suits, made clothes, that kind of thing. And so these 3 tailors, they got together and they realized there were people that would come buy a jacket, let's say, buy a jacket from one tailor. And they'd say, oh, I'll pay you next week. But they'd never come back and pay. And then the same person would go to another tailor and they'd buy a pair of pants. And they'd say, oh, I'll pay you next week, something like that. But they'd never pay for it. And then the same person would go to another tailor and they'd buy a shirt, let's say. And they'll say, oh, I'll pay you another time. Just, you know, keep a line for me. And they'd get credit with that tailor, but they'd never come back and pay. So these tailors got together and they made a list of the people that were not paying their bills. And ultimately, when that person would come back to one of the tailors, they would say, oh, you're on the list, so you can't buy any clothes here until you pay your debt. So that's the way this all started. This actually happened. It started kind of from the clothing industry, from tailors that were just keeping track on people that were not paying their bills. So that's what Equifax started out of. Okay. So the next one is TransUnion. TransUnion started. It's the newest. It started in 1968. And it serves about 33 countries, okay? And it has a couple of other services. All of these credit bureaus, they have credit lock services, meaning if you feel like you've been a victim of fraud, something like that, you can actually put a lock on your credit and no one can check your credit without actually calling you on the phone and verifying that they have your permission to do so. So, TransUnion also has not just a lock service, but they actually have something called Credit Compass. And that's kind of a credit utility that helps you get on track with your credit. It kind of helps you, experiment with different numbers in your credit and kind of like moves you along, gives you a little credit education. Okay, so the third one is Experian. Experian started in 1826. It is the oldest credit agency. It serves about 37 countries in the world. Okay, and again, it also offers that credit lock, and it offers some different services. You can go online and get an Experian account. You can get a basic FICO score. They use the FICO 8 method. and you can see your scores, you can see that kind of information. You can't see TransUnion nor Equifax on Experian unless you pay for it, but for free you can actually get on there and they offer that. Now, something else that all three credit agencies or credit bureaus offer is credit monitoring. So I do like going and signing up for Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, their monitoring services, because if you have an account with them directly, you can actually get updates via email, and I think maybe text on a couple of them. You can get an update. Every time something changes on your credit report, you get an email the same day. So it's very nice to have that credit monitoring so you can see what's going on with your credit, who's looking at it, how it changed. Did your points go up? Did they go down? You can get that information instantaneously if you sign up for each of these companies, each credit bureaus and their alert or their monitoring services. So very cool stuff. All right, guys, that's the end of Module 3. We'll see you in the next one. Okay, guys, welcome back. Moving right along. This is Module 4. We're going to talk about the different credit monitoring services available to you. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, they do have their own credit monitoring facilities. So you can sign up with them individually and you can get monitoring. They can just send you little pieces of information, emails when your credit score changes, and that's a really huge thing. You should do that. And I'm going to talk about a few other monitoring services that are offered here, okay? So not only can you get your credit scores from Equifax and TransUnion and Experian independently, and I said Experian does have a free plan that you can use, and so does Equifax. So you can go on there, get your score, you can get a few more pieces of information from Experian and Equifax. Those are free. TransUnion, you actually have to pay for your services there, so you don't have to sign up for that. You can get 2 out of the 3 credit bureau reports just for free, signing up at Experian and Equifax. Just some basic information. You'll know your FICO score, and you'll know kind of why your score is what it is with these free services, okay? So just go to Experian.com, sign up for that, and you'll get your free credit report, and you'll also get free credit monitoring. You can also see what your score is, like on a daily basis. It could change for you, all right? Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, freecreditreport.com, that's a place if you've never gotten your credit score for this year, you can go get that. You're allowed 1 free credit report per year, as we talked about. So you can go to freecreditreport.com. That's another monitoring or a sign-up service you can use, okay? Credit Karma is another monitoring facility. Okay, it's free also, but you only get reports from 2 sources. And it only comes every 7 days. So it's just as easy to go to Experian and Equifax and sign up for their free monitoring directly. Credit Karma is fine. I'm not saying you don't have to use that, but you only get those results or those updates every 7 days. So it's not as timely as just signing up at the credit bureaus, okay? Now, Capital One, if you have a Capital One card, you don't have to have a Capital One card, but they have a service called CreditWise. CreditWise, and CreditWise actually is an app that you can download to your phone, and it's also available, I think, online as well. You can use it on your computer, on the internet, and it does the same type of thing as Credit Karma. You can actually get updates, you get your score, you get an explanation of why your score is what it is, and just some basic information like that. That's available to you, and it also updates every 7 days. So what you'll see is a lot of these secondary reporting facilities, they don't update every day like Experian and Equifax do, but they have a good source. There are a good source of information. They update once a week. That's kind of the way it works, okay? So, just to kind of like sum up, in order to get up-to-the-minute reporting, the best thing is just to go and get your score from Experian or Equifax. Like I said, those update multiple times a week, and you can be right in the information when something changes. It's always a good thing to have in case fraud is committed against one of your credit cards. Immediately you can call the company, you can have it taken care of, get a new card out to you as soon as possible. So that's a very convenient thing. So a couple of others that I've used in the past and we use right now, there's another credit and security company called IdentityIQ. That's identityiq.com. Now, if that's our preferred credit report tool. So if you do work with us to fix your credit for you, we'll be asking that you have an IdentityIQ account. It's not free, has a little charge to it, but again, that's the preferred one we use because it has the most abundance of information that we've seen and allows us and our team to help you quickly clean up your credit. So that's the one we use. There's also another one that I've used in the past called ScoreSense.com. ScoreSense is also a great tool. It allows you to see all 3 credit reports, and you can see those updated every 7 days. So every week you get a new report. It's every Wednesday. And you go on there, it shows if your credit has gone up or down, it shows you why, and it shows you everything that's reported on your credit since last week. So very good tools there. All right, guys, that's the end of Module 4. We'll see you in the next module. All right, guys, welcome back. This is Module 5. We're going to talk about credit card debt. I'm going to share with you some startling numbers when it comes to what people owe on credit and kind of the temperature of credit in this country right now. It's kind of crazy. So let me give you some numbers that I've gotten from the different websites like Motley Fool and some of the other credit websites. So total credit card balances, and this is first quarter of 2020, so it's already more than a year old, but total credit card balances in the US are $893 billion. And that was as of the first quarter of 2020. So there's been a little time since then, but $893 billion people are holding in credit card balances on their credit cards. That's crazy. All right. So I want to talk about another statistic. I'm going to say this, and then we're going to go through an example. So 90% of disposable income goes to paying back credit card debt. And that's so a typical family in the US, 90% of disposable income goes to paying back credit card debt. Now that means, let's say you make $5,000 a month, okay? And you have $1,000 in disposable income. That means after all your bills, what's left over is $1,000 a month. So that's your disposable income. What the statistic is saying is that 90% of that $1,000 is used to just pay back credit card debt that you already have. So $900 out of that $1,000 in that disposable income you're using to just pay credit card debt back, or the average American is. So that's a crazy thing. So it's basically saying nobody has any disposable income because what they do have is being used to pay back credit card debt for things that they've already purchased. Okay? So here's another study from the Motley Fool website. It shows basically on average that 80% of Americans are strapped in debt. So 370 million some odd Americans, 80% of those people are absolutely strapped in debt, meaning debt that they may never get out of. So this is a very serious problem we have here, okay? And the reason I bring these to your attention is when we talk about credit here, and we talk about fixing credit, boosting credit, helping you develop your credit history, and helping you get more credit, okay, and be more valuable to the banks. We're doing that so that you can create leverage in your life, okay? I'm not helping you get credit cards so you can go out and drive them up, spend all that money, and then just be in bigger debt than you were before. That's not the goal here. The goal here is to raise your quality of life by allowing you to have leverage in your life, okay? And that comes from getting a good FICO score, a high FICO score, and not owing a lot of money to people. Okay, so all I'm saying is use your credit in small increments, okay? Those balances compound over time. So the more you have, the more money it's gonna take you to pay those off over time. And when you're getting, if you have credit cards that have higher interest rates, like 19, 20, 25% interest, you're paying so much money just to hold those balances on those cards. It's really hard to get out from under, okay? So again, use that information or use those your credit card balances in small increments. Use your credit cards in small increments. Don't overspend. Use them for emergencies. But ultimately, we're going to get into more strategies on how to do that. But this is kind of a warning. You're going to get more credit if you stay with us on other courses, and it's going to give you this leverage and this ability to buy things that you maybe not have had in the past, and so you're going to need the discipline not to spend all your money doing that. Okay, that's all I had for Module 5. So we'll see you in the next module. All right, guys, welcome back. This is Module 6. We're going to talk about how your score is calculated, okay? So remember, we've talked about a FICO score in the past, okay? And the FICO score is based on 5 types of information, basically 5 components. Just think of it as like 5 pieces of a pie, and some of those pieces are bigger than others, and some of those are a lot more important than others, all right? So we're going to start with the first one. It's called payment history, okay? Payment history is the most important factor in your credit score, okay? And it shows whether you've paid your credit cards on time. Payment history typically, consists of like a 24 running month balance. And so when you look at your credit report for the first time, you'll see all these boxes and you'll see 24 of those. And that's basically starts with this last reporting period and it goes back 24 months, okay? And if there are green, if those boxes are green, that means you made the payments on time. If they're not green, it means you didn't make a payment. Okay, so very important to keep your payment history in really good standing. That's the most important. And now this score varies, but from experience perspective, it counts 35% of your FICO score. Now, as an aggregate across all the 3 different credit bureaus, that number is 40%. So it's 40%. Overall, like between Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, counts 40% of your score. And from an experience perspective, they'll tell you it counts 35%, okay? All right, so amounts owed, your overall balance, okay? Outstanding balance. This is how much debt you owe, okay? It's the second most important category. You can have a great payment history, but if you're strapped with debt and you've charged up your cards and you owe 60% of the available balance on all your credit cards, that's really going to hurt your score. This score is worth 35% of your FICO score. So, and I always say this because I want you to get there's a variance, right? So Experian says it's 30%, but if you look at the percentages across all 3 credit bureaus, it's 35. So 40 for payment history, 35 for your outstanding balance, okay? Huge, those are the biggest 2. That's the most important thing we're gonna work on when we're trying to fix your credit, okay? Okay, the next category, length of credit history. So this is how long you've had that mortgage or how long you've had that credit card or how long you've had that car payment, okay? So length of credit history, it's important because it tells creditors and lenders, hey, this guy has, or this girl has, they've had this credit card for 15 years and they've paid on it on time. So they are a good candidate for us to loan money to, or they're a good candidate for us to extend credit to via credit card. And this is 10% of your score, okay? So that's an important number, 10%. So think about that. The other 2 scores are 40 and 35. This is only 10. Now, it's only 10, but it is important, okay? Because what you'll see when we're talking in the future, when we talk about improving or raising your credit score, if you can show a longer credit history, it can bump your credit score up, your FICO score up by like 50 points. So it really is important, okay? Okay, next category, credit mix, all right? So credit mix is based on how many different types of credit you have. Okay, so a credit card account, doesn't matter what it is, Bank of America, American Express, Chase, that's a revolving credit type. So if you have a credit card, you have a revolving credit. Now, if you have a mortgage, okay, that's an installment loan type, okay? So that means that you have a set amount that you're slowly paying off over time. So that's an account type of installment, okay, or mortgage. There's different classifications, but ultimately it's not revolving because the balance doesn't change. It's always one primary balance. So if you buy a car for $35,000, that's the maximum that car payment's ever, or that amount's ever going to be, $35,000, and you're slowly paying it off over the future months, right? So that's an installment account. All right. So those are really the 2 primary accounts we're talking about. All right. So ultimately, again, that's a 10% of your credit score. So credit mix is kind of like your length of credit. It's the same amount. Credit mix, important, but not nearly as important as the first 2. But again, that's a 10% part of your score, of your FICO score. Okay, so the next category is new credit. All right, so the new credit looks at how many hard inquiries you've had. Now, if you remember, we talked a little bit about when you sign up for credit, it's going to put an inquiry on your credit report. Okay, and basically, if you do that too many times in a short amount of time, it's going to cost you points on your FICO score. Now, the new credit, the inquiries, number of inquiries score is only 5% of your credit report, and it makes sense because when you are trying to build your credit profile, you're always trying to get new credit cards and things like that to increase your overall available balance. So it's a very important thing for you to do that. But at the same time, I really would suggest keeping your number of inquiries under 10 because that's when it can really start affecting your score. All right. So new credit is the 5th of the 5 different pieces of your credit score, and it scores 5%. So let's go back. Payment history, 40%. Outstanding balance, 35. Credit history or length of credit, that's 10. The different types of credit you have, that's 10. And then ultimately, the new credit or number of inquiries, that's a 5% hit, okay? So I want to talk real quick before we end this about closing accounts, okay? I don't recommend you ever close an account. So if you have a lot of credit cards, I know it might be a pain to keep up with them all. If you have a credit card with only like $500 worth of credit on it, I just suggest you use it just very lightly or not use it at all, but keep that credit account open, because if you close a credit account, let's just say it only has a $500 limit on it, but what if you've had that credit card for 5 years? If you close that credit card account, you've lost 5 years of history, 5 years of credit length. So that's definitely going to hurt your credit. It could drop your score by 100 points or more. It just depends on how long you've had that credit card and how good of a standing you've had. If you've paid that card every month, for the last 24 months and it's in good standing and you close it, you lose all that good standing. So you don't want to lose anything. We're always trying to boost and prop up that credit score, that FICO score. So I don't recommend you ever close these type of credit accounts. Can get you into real trouble with your FICO score. Okay, cool. And again, use your cards to build credit. Okay, don't spend a bunch of money. That's not what this is about. We want you to have a better quality of life, and that comes with having leverage. If you have an emergency, if you need to buy a house, if you need a new car, that's what having good credit's about. Okay, it's not about blowing all the credit card money on things, arbitrary things. Anyway, cool. So last but not least, just real quick, lenders are looking at a snapshot, okay? When they look at your credit report, they're actually looking at your inquiries and debts over the last 7 years, okay? If you have some type of charge-off or some type of late or some type of even a bankruptcy or a foreclosure, those stay on your credit for 7 years unless you take the steps to get them off before that. So just understand, typically what people see when they see your credit report, they see a 7-year history of what's gone on in your payment and your credit past, okay? So that's just a little piece of information. It's not always about this year, it's not always about last year. It could be up to 7 years ago when they're looking at information, when they're trying to make a decision on whether or not to give you credit. All right, so that's all we got for Module 6. I'll see you in the next module. Okay guys, welcome back. This is Module 7. We're going to be talking about understanding your credit score, okay? So, according to Experian, these ranges could vary depending on the credit score modeling, okay? But so we talked about the credit range being from 350 to 850, okay? So, let's start out at a higher level than that, because 350 to 850, I mean, when you're down in the lower levels like that, below 500, you've probably had some really bad problems with credit. Maybe you lost the person that would have that kind of credit has lost everything. They had a foreclosure. Maybe they had a business go bad. But if you're below 500, we've got a lot of work to do. And that's definitely something you can fix and rectify, but you're not going to get loans, that kind of thing, not going to happen for you at that level. So let's go up a little bit and kind of and look at how Experian looks at credit, okay? So a score from 580 to 669, that's considered fair, okay? It's fair credit. Now, I will tell you that to to get it like an FHA loan, the Fair Housing Authority is looking at like a 620 minimum to give you an FHA loan. So if you're going to go out there and get an FHA loan for a house, you can qualify for that house up to for as low as a 620 credit score. So you're in that range already. You know, if you have between a 620 and a 669, that's a fair credit score. But more than likely, you're not going to get credit cards and loans at that level, okay, other than an FHA loan, okay? So let's talk about going from 670 to 739. That's considered good, okay? At that point, you're probably going to get loans. You may be able to get some credit cards, but they're going to cost you a lot of money. They're going to be at higher interest rates. So you got to be careful with that. It's good to build your credit. It's good to get those cards at that level, but it's going to cost you like 25% interest, maybe even more on those credit cards. And the worst thing you can do at that point is to charge those cards up and have to pay that ridiculous amount of interest. So be careful with that. Okay, so let's go from 740 to 799. This is considered very good credit. Anything above 780, honestly, is a really awesome score. You pretty much, they roll out the red carpet to you, you know, and you can pretty much get most of the credit cards that you want at very comparable or very competitive rates, okay? And then, of course, 800 and above, it's carte blanche. You can get very high-end black cards, the American Express Platinum card, the one that's metal, you can get that with an 800 plus credit score. You can actually get it with a 750 plus. But the better your credit score, the more you're worth to banks. You walk in, if you need a loan for something, they see that you have an 800 credit score, they're not even going to question it. Typically, they're just going to give you money. So that's a good thing, right? Cool. All right, that's what I have for this module. We'll see you in the next module. All right, guys, quick follow-up to Module 7. I wanted to show you actually what it looks like in Identity IQ when you're looking at different types of trade lines or different types of items on your credit report, just so you understand the different fields that are listed here specifically across all different credit reports here, and then some examples of those values. So what I have pulled up here, and again, this is IdentityIQ.com. What I have pulled up here is a listing of an American Express card that I have, okay? And this is actually a current card. You'll notice the dates are pretty current here. So the first thing we look at is the account type. It's a revolving account, and we talked about the different types of accounts. This is a revolving credit account because it's a credit card, it's an Amex card, okay? You notice the bureau code here. This is where we talk about if this is an authorized user account, it would say AU, authorized user. If it was, sometimes it says INV, sometimes it says just individual here. So on this particular tool, Identity IQ, the bureau code is individual. Sometimes you may see INV here for individual. That means it's my credit card. I'm not just an authorized user of it, it's actually my card, okay? All right, so then you have account status. This account is open, it's not closed. Monthly payment, that would be where your monthly payment's listed. Like if it's a fixed amount, if it was like a car loan or a mortgage, monthly payment would show there would be a fixed amount every month. Okay, date opened. This is when I actually opened this credit card for the first time, 2007. And then my balance would be the it would be the amount that I owe on it right now, okay? This month's balance. Number of months, there's no terms to this because it is a revolving account. If it was a mortgage, I'll show you an example of that in a minute. If it was a car payment, you would see like number of months there. High credit, let me tell you the difference between high credit and credit limit. So you may have a $10,000 credit limit or a $1,000 credit limit, but maybe at some point you went over your limit on this card. That's actually a negative thing against your score as well. But if I'd ever gone over my limit, it would show up in the high credit, meaning the maximum I've ever put on this card. So that would show up there. Of course, your credit limit is your credit limit, 1,000, 5,000, 500, doesn't matter. That's where your credit limit would show up. Okay, now if I ever were more than 30 days past due, and this was something that would affect my payment history, my past due amount would show up here. If I didn't make a payment in that 30-day cycle, And I still, even after that 30 days, I hadn't made a payment. My past due amount would show up in that those columns right there. Okay, payment status, I'm current on this card, which is good. The last date it reported. So, this is something interesting. We talked about how all three credit reports don't always show the same information every month. So these three are, you notice that the first two, TransUnion and Experian, the last they reported on this was on the 9th of July, but Equifax has not updated this since the 1st of July. So very interesting how and everybody has, different information in these blanks, and you don't really know how all this comes about. You don't always know when they're gonna check check the information and report on it. Okay. And then there's always comments if a particular reporting credit bureau has information or reports in the information there. So sometimes the comments are valid, sometimes they're just they're just whatever. Okay, date last active. Again, if this isn't the date that it was last reported, this might have been the last time or last cycle that you actually charged on this card. So, and then there's date of last payment. Sometimes that reflects the bill cycle. So you have a cycle date on your credit card. If you ever looked at your credit card statement, you have a due date. You also have a cycle close date. The cycle close date a lot of times is the date that sometimes it's the date that credit cards report to the credit bureaus. Sometimes the credit cards have a different date that they report to the bureaus. So this is something we talked about in the last module. This is the 2-year payment history. So there's 24 months of history here. And I mentioned that, if you've made good payments, you typically have a green box. If you haven't made payments, that's a red box. And these all say okay. Now notice again, there's some inconsistencies. So it looks like up through June the 21st, it says okay, but July 21st hasn't really posted yet. So that means that TransUnion decided not to check that month. Equifax has 2 or 3 months there where they did not report on my American Express status. So again, you always have slight variations in the information that's being reported. Now I'm going to go to the next slide here. This is an older car lease I had. You'll notice that the creditor is Toyota Motors at the top there. And this was a lease. So you'll notice the account type says auto lease or lease, and then Equifax is reporting it as a loan. So each of these credit bureaus have a different information for what kind of account type this is. Kind of funny. So then the date opened, you'll see when that lease was actually opened. Now you'll notice the account status says open. This is interesting because it's something that's been on my credit for a while. It's not hurting my credit per se, but this has not been a lease that has been closed out, and I haven't had this lease since. You'll notice the date last active was May of 2020. So this is something that's just sitting out there on my credit report, not necessarily hurting me, but I'm probably going to send a letter and see if I can get this thing removed because it really shouldn't be on there anymore because it's not really accurate. And we'll talk in Chapter 2 about how important it is to keep your credit report accurate. So you'll see monthly payment. Like I said, from the revolving credit account did not have a monthly payment, but this one actually does. Shows you the terms of that lease when it was active, 48 months, and that kind of information. So this is the example, and you'll notice again the payment history. I always had good payments. Those were always in good standing. So this is an example of a auto lease. Now I'm going to give you an example of this is a loan. So I'm a veteran of the military, so I actually have a VA mortgage. And so this is just a little difference here, like number of months there. That's the terms, however months that are left on that mortgage. Just refinanced recently. So you'll notice the 2-year payment history is not that long. It's because I just refinanced this down to a really, really low rate as money is cheap right now. So bureau code, individual. This is my mortgage. Credit limit, past due, all those numbers. Payment history or payment status is current. And you'll see the last reported date was June the 30th.
no real comments, and then the date last active. So all those dates sometimes they line up, sometimes they don't. And then the date of last payment is on there, and these are all different. So this is a great example of how you can see Experian and TransUnion typically are a little closer, and then Equifax sometimes is lagging behind on how they report. So I just wanted to bring this to you, show you what this looks like on your credit report. Hopefully that helps you identify these items when you look at your credit report for the first time. All right, see you in the next module.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is Module 8. We're going to talk about hard pull versus soft pull. Now we have mentioned this a little bit already in this course. We're talking about inquiries that are on your report. Remember, it's that 5% part of your FICO score. So hard inquiries show up on your credit report, and they show up for 24 months. So when you apply for a new credit card, when you apply for a car loan, you apply for a home loan, you're going to get that hard inquiry on your account. That's a hard pull, okay? And it's going to be on there for 24 months. And then on the 25th month, it automatically falls off your credit and is gone. So that's kind of automatic. It's one of the only things that's automatic, and it falls off your credit. It falls off. So it's really, that's a good thing that way. Now that's hard pulls. Most lenders pull your credit to check your credit worthiness. So if you get denied, even if you get accepted or denied, it's going to cost you a few points, because again, if that's your first hard inquiry on your credit, probably not going to make a whole lot of difference on your credit report. But if you have more than 10, I think I mentioned that in the past. If you have more than 10 inquiries and you get an 11th inquiry, that's really going to hurt your credit, because they start looking down on you. They think that you're looking for credit. They think that you're shopping for credit. So it's very important that you don't use so many inquiries in a small period of time. So let's talk about that as well. If you go for credit, try to keep your inquiries, or try to keep your hard pulls under 2 in a 6-month period. So don't try to apply for more than 2 loans in 6 months at any point. I mean, you can do it, but it's going to hurt your score if you do it. And you may not get the credit line that you want. You may get a credit card, but they may not give you the credit limit that you really want, because they're going to see that you've applied already twice in the last 6 months for credit, and that's going to make them look negatively on you as someone they want to extend credit to. So be careful about that, okay? So then soft pulls, those are generally, they're a different kind of bank. Typically a Lowe's card. If you go to Lowe's and you apply for a card, you can actually see what you qualify for. So there are several companies that you can go and see how you would qualify, or if you'd qualify for one of their cards, or store cards, or even credit cards. And they only do a hard pull. So you can do 100 of those a day. They do not show up on your credit report. And that's what a soft pull is, okay? And again, just to reiterate, having too many inquiries on your credit tells lenders that you're searching for credit. You're fishing for credit. And that looks negatively on you. You don't really want that. Okay, so be careful of how many you look for in a small amount of time. There's actually a trick to this that we'll show you in the next course, where you can actually get up to 5 credit cards with 1 inquiry. And that works really well, done it multiple times. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, that's all I have for this module. That's hard pull versus soft pull. Hard pulls go on your credit as inquiries, soft pulls do not. See you in the next module. Hey guys, welcome back. Real quick, I want to talk about pre-approvals and store cards for you. So we talked a little bit about hard pulls and soft pulls in the last module. I just wanted to shoot an extra video as a little addendum to that. So understand that the pre-approval notices that you get in the mail, you're not necessarily pre-approved for those. What that means is you showed up on a marketing list as someone who may have had a score in a certain range. And so the banks like to send, and the banks and the credit card companies like to send large amounts of mail out to people that qualify. All that shows is that they're in a certain range. It doesn't mean you're actually pre-approved for that card. So it's great marketing. It'll give you a pre-approval code, make you feel special that you're pre-approved, and you call in, you actually sign up. You're going to go through the same process as if you had not been pre-approved. They're still going to ask for your social security number, and they're going to actually hit you with a hard inquiry on your credit, and then you may or may not qualify for the card. So just be careful about that. Don't assume that you're pre-approved for a card just because you get a pre-approval notice in the mail. Now, another thing I want to talk to you about, you may have been shopping in Walmart or Target or, I don't know, some other store, and when you go to check out at Target, they say, hey, would you like to save 10% today? Well, what they're actually doing there is offering you a store card. They're offering you a store credit card, okay? Now, if you don't have any credit, these are actually a great way to start building your credit, but understand that these store cards have very high interest rates, okay? So let's just say you get a store card, they ask you if you want to save 10%, you say sure. So they do the quick sign up, you get approved for that card, and let's just say your interest rate is 30%, your APR. It'll say APR and it'll give you a number, 30%. That means if you put $100 on that card and you don't pay that $100 off within 30 days, that means you're going to have a balance of $100 on that account, and they're going to charge you that 30% interest rate. So now you owe $130 on that card, and you just had $100 on it the month before. So just be very careful about those balances and about carrying balances on store cards and about the APRs or the interest rates you're going to get, because they're going to be really high. Again, it's a good way to start developing credit, but those cards are not very desirable over a long period of time, okay? As your credit gets better, you're going to get much lower rates for APRs on your credit cards, okay? Awesome. That's all I had for you. We'll see you in the next module. Hey, welcome back, guys. This is Module 9. We're going to be talking about navigating your credit report, okay? So as you look through your credit report for the first time, there are multiple sections, okay? The first one of those is your personal identification information. You're going to see things like your name, alias names, previous names, such as if you got married, your previous last name would be on there. You're going to see your address, your current address, and any other addresses you may have, okay? You're also going to see previous addresses in that section. You're going to see employer information. If you're an employee of a company, you should probably see your employer's name there, and maybe some previous employment information there as well, okay? So, I want to tell you about this section, personal identification. This is the way when somebody wants to levy a debt against you, this is the way they verify if it's really you or not. So if a collection agency is going to report a collection on your credit report, they look at name, they look at address, they can look at employer, they can look at phone number, they can look at alias names. So it's very important that if you have old debts and they're connected to an old address, or they're connected to an old employer, or an old name, that you do not have those names or addresses on your credit report. So what we're going to talk about in future modules is fixing or cleaning up our personal information, because you could have had credit for 15, 20 years, and any misspelling you ever had on a credit app, or any misspelling you ever had on some other tax form or some other mortgage application form is going to show up in this report. And it's real important that we get all those off there that are not right, or that you just don't want on there anymore. There's no reason you have to keep all your old previous addresses on your credit report, and it's absolutely within your right to take all that stuff off. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. All right, so I'm going to cut to another video that will actually show you this on the computer. So let's go there now. Hey guys, it's Larry again. Just to follow up, wanted to kind of show you on the computer what your personal identifying information looks like. Just to go through that list of items again, you'll see in that section. So this is the Identity IQ credit report that you would receive if you used that service. That's identityiq.com. And so you'll see across the top here, we have TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, 3 different colors, so 3 different credit reports. And so this is the first area that you'll look at. This is your personal identifying information here. And so the first thing you see there is your name. And, I didn't want to share all my personal information here just in case it's going to, I didn't want to
first of all, I didn't want to reveal that, but didn't really want ever, to get in trouble with this company either. So name, typically you'll see Larry Dyson or Larry K. Dyson if I use my middle initial. And then the second blank is also known as, these are the aliases we talked about. So this is where you're going to see any misspellings of your name, or maybe names that, nicknames or something you might have included in an application or on something that you signed up for, and that information made it onto your credit report. And then you also see the next blank is former. Those are former names. So maybe that was your maiden name if you are now married, or maybe a different name if you assumed a new name. Those might show up there. And then of course your date of birth. After that, current address or addresses. So this may list one address. It may have multiple addresses. If you have multiple properties, you may have been identified on LexisNexis or another one of those data collection services to have multiple addresses, and they'd be listed here. Also, previous addresses. So if you've moved, if you lived in multiple places, rented multiple apartments, or owned multiple homes, you may see previous addresses showing up here in that blank. And then last but not least, employers. So your current employer should be listed here. If it's incorrect, you may want to have this updated or removed, but this would have your current employer, or it may have previous employers. Because I am now a business owner and run a company, I still have, sometimes in some of the older reports, you shows my previous employer here. So this is where in future modules we'll talk about, how to clean this up and why it's so important to have this information correct. And it's also going to be a key indicator when you start to improve your credit. If you have bad credit, you need to clean it up. This area of the credit report is going to be very handy in doing that. And we'll talk more about that in Chapter 2. So stay tuned. All right, we'll see you in the next module. Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to define a few terms for you on an actual credit report, so you know what you're looking at and know what you're reading when you're looking at each entry on your credit report. So what I have pulled up here, and again, this is identityiq.com. What I have pulled up here is a listing of an American Express card that I have, okay? And this is actually a current card. You'll notice the dates are pretty current here. So the first thing we look at is the account type. It's a revolving account, and we talked about the different types of accounts. This is a revolving credit account because it's a credit card. It's an Amex card, okay? You notice the bureau code here. This is where we talk about if this is an authorized user account, it would say AU, authorized user. If it was, sometimes it says INV, sometimes it says just individual here. So on this particular tool, Identity IQ, the bureau code is individual. Sometimes you may see INV here for individual. That means it's my credit card. I'm not just an authorized user of it, it's actually my card, okay? All right, so then you have account status. This account is open, it's not closed. Monthly payment, that would be where your monthly payment's listed. Like if it's a fixed amount, if it was like a car loan or a mortgage, monthly payment would show there, it'd be a fixed amount every month. Okay, date opened. This is when I actually opened this credit card for the first time, 2007. And then my balance would be the amount that I owe on it right now, okay? This month's balance. Number of months, there's no terms to this because it is a revolving account. If it was a mortgage, I'll show you an example of that in a minute. If it was a car payment, you would see like number of months there. High credit, let me tell you the difference between high credit and credit limit. So you may have a $10,000 credit limit or a $1,000 credit limit, but maybe at some point you went over your limit on this card. That's actually a negative thing against your score as well. But if I'd ever gone over my limit, it would show up in the high credit, meaning the maximum I've ever put on this card. So that would show up there. Of course, your credit limit is your credit limit, 1,000, 5,000, 500, doesn't matter. That's where your credit limit would show up. Okay, now if I ever were more than 30 days past due, and this was something that would affect my payment history, my past due amount would show up here. If I didn't make a payment in that 30-day cycle, And I still, even after that 30 days, I hadn't made a payment. My past due amount would show up in that those columns right there. Okay, payment status, I'm current on this card, which is good. The last date it reported. So, this is something interesting. We talked about how all three credit reports don't always show the same information every month. So these three are, you notice that the first two, TransUnion and Experian, the last they reported on this was on the 9th of July, but Equifax has not updated this since the 1st of July. So very interesting how and everybody has, different information in these blanks, and you don't really know how all this comes about. You don't always know when they're gonna check the information and report on it. Okay. And then there's always comments if a particular reporting credit bureau has information or reports in the information there. So sometimes the comments are valid, sometimes they're just they're just whatever. Okay, date last active. Again, if this isn't the date that it was last reported, this might have been the last time or last cycle that you actually charged on this card. So, and then there's date of last payment. Sometimes that reflects the bill cycle. So you have a cycle date on your credit card. If you ever looked at your credit card statement, you have a due date. You also have a cycle close date. The cycle close date a lot of times is the date that sometimes it's the date that credit cards report to the credit bureaus. Sometimes the credit cards have a different date that they report to the bureaus. So this is something we talked about in the last module. This is the 2-year payment history. So there's 24 months of history here. And I mentioned that, if you've made good payments, you typically have a green box. If you haven't made payments, that's a red box. And these all say okay. Now notice again, there's some inconsistencies. So it looks like up through June the 21st, it says okay, but July 21st hasn't really posted yet. So that means that TransUnion decided not to check that month. Equifax has 2 or 3 months there where they did not report on my American Express status. So again, you always have slight variations in the information that's being reported. Now I'm going to go to the next slide here. This is an older car lease I had. You'll notice that the creditor is Toyota Motors at the top there. And this was a lease. So you'll notice the account type says auto lease or lease, and then Equifax is reporting it as a loan. So each of these credit bureaus have a different information for what kind of account type this is. Kind of funny. So then the date opened, you'll see when that lease was actually opened. Now you'll notice the account status says open. This is interesting because it's something that's been on my credit for a while. It's not hurting my credit per se, but this has not been a lease that has been closed out, and I haven't had this lease since. You'll notice the date last active was May of 2020. So this is something that's just sitting out there on my credit report, not necessarily hurting me, but I'm probably going to send a letter and see if I can get this thing removed because it really shouldn't be on there anymore because it's not really accurate. And we'll talk in chapter 2 about how important it is to keep your credit report accurate. So you'll see monthly payment. Like I said, from the revolving credit account did not have a monthly payment, but this one actually does. Shows you the terms of that lease when it was active, 48 months, and that kind of information. So this is the example, and you'll notice again the payment history. I always had good payments. Those were always in good standing. So this is an example of an auto lease. Now I'm going to give you an example of this is a loan. So I'm a veteran of the military, so I actually have a VA mortgage. And so this is just a little difference here, like number of months there. That's the terms, however months that are left on that mortgage. Just refinanced recently. So you'll notice the 2-year payment history is not that long. It's because I just refinanced this down to a really, really low rate as money is cheap right now. So bureau code individual, this is my mortgage. Credit limit past due, all those numbers. Payment history or payment status is current. And you'll see the last reported date was June the 30th. no real comments, and then the date last active. So all those dates sometimes they line up, sometimes they don't. And then the date of last payment is on there, and these are all different. So this is a great example of how you can see Experian and TransUnion typically are a little closer, and then Equifax sometimes is lagging behind on how they report. So I just wanted to bring this to you, show you what this looks like on your credit report. Hopefully that helps you identify these items when you look at your credit report for the first time. All right, see you in the next module.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is chapter 2. We're going to talk about how to establish good credit in this chapter. So let's start with module 1 here. Today we're going to talk about what is a trade line. Okay, now a trade line is any account on your credit report. It's a mortgage, it's a credit card, it's a car payment, anything that reports individually on a line item in your credit report. That's a trade line. So we didn't really talk about trade lines in those terms in chapter 1, but I'm establishing this for you in this chapter because it's real important. We're going to go forward talking about all kinds of different trade lines. And I want you to just know that having a credit card account, having a mortgage, that's synonymous with a trade line, okay? So we'll talk in those terms going forward because now you're past chapter 1, you have the basics, and we can move forward. Everything's a trade line that we're going to talk about, all right? Okay, so there's 2 different types of trade lines, and there's actually more than 2, but we're going to focus on 2 primarily, okay? A primary account, that's the first type of trade line. That's when you look in the columns in your different listings on your credit report, you see those individual types of trade lines or individual types of accounts. That's an individual trade line, okay? That's something that you have. It's the credit card you have in your pocket. It's the mortgage that you signed up for at the bank. So it's an individual trade line, okay? The other type of trade line is an authorized user trade line. Now this is you have been authorized to use, let's say, a business's credit card, or maybe you have you're just an authorized user on your mom's account or your grandma's account or something like that. They've listed you as an authorized user. Whether you have the card or not, you still get the credit for that trade line on your account, on your credit report, okay? So it's very important. And this is going to be one of the primary ways to boost your credit. We'll talk about this in future modules. But authorized user trade lines are very powerful, and they're a good way to boost your credit quickly. So, very important. So, individual trade lines, that's your primary, okay? That's your credit cards. Authorized user trade lines, those are trade lines that you didn't sign up for, but you've been listed as an authorized user on their account, and therefore you get those marks, you get the positive credit for that on your credit report, okay? This is also known as piggybacking, if you've ever heard that. All right, that's all for module 1. We'll see you in the next module. Okay guys, welcome back. This is module 2. We're going to talk about what credit repair is, okay? So credit repair means that you are legally able to challenge anything that you believe is negative or inaccurate on your credit report. So anything that you think is not accurate, even aliases of your name, addresses you used to live out. If you see anything on your credit report that doesn't look like, that's not my address, or, oh, I never had an alias like that, you are legally allowed to challenge anything. And you're going to challenge that with the source, the creditor themselves. So if you have a Bank of America credit card and they reported something false on your credit report, you can challenge it with them. You can also challenge it with the credit bureaus, okay? So very important. You're allowed to challenge anything. It's your credit report. It's your data. You're allowed to challenge it, okay? So in this world where the percentage of people that have negative marks on their credit, charge-offs, late fee, late charges, maybe even a foreclosure or something like that, or a bankruptcy, there's a lot of people in America, unfortunately. Remember we talked about in the last chapter where 80% of Americans are strapped with credit. A lot of it is negatives or bad marks on their credit. So in that world, it's really important that you have the ability and the right to challenge all the things on your credit. You can challenge those every 30 days or as often as you want, really. So the credit bureau has 30 days to validate that information. So when you make a challenge, when you say this is incorrect, they actually have up to 45 days now, but typically it's a 30-day window when you send that in for them to challenge that, and they have the right to respond to you within 45 days as to whether what was on your credit report was accurate or inaccurate. Okay, so typically when you make a challenge, you send a letter in saying this is not correct on my credit. You'll get a notification back from the credit agency saying we did an investigation, and they'll either say this was removed or they'll say we have verified this is accurate. Okay, so you find things that are incorrect on your credit, you challenge that with specific forms that you'll learn about, and the credit report the credit agency or credit bureau has 45 days max to respond to you. All right, that's the end of Module 2. We'll see you in the next module.